Please welcome Co-Chief Executive Officer, Tenable, Stephen Vintz.
Good afternoon. You've heard a lot about AI this week, and guess what? You're about to hear more, but from a different perspective. The AI story really begins in 1956 when researchers from a Dartmouth workshop confidently predicted that machines would soon think like humans. 70 years later, they now produce all sorts of amazing things, like essays, artwork, and extremely confident and often very wrong answers. So should you be worried about AI? I'll get back to you on that. As a co-CEO of Tenable, I lead a company that has access to vast amounts of exposure data. This data tells us all kinds of interesting stories. So today I'm going to share a few stories with you. Actually, 3 seemingly plausible stories. Stories of how AI can go wrong. Your job is to guess which one's true. Ready? Okay. Story number 1. Recently, a major financial institution rolled out an internal AI assistant powered by OpenAI. It was meant to help employees work faster, summarize documents, and analyze data. And people loved it. Usage exploded across the company. But there's a problem no one noticed. The agent unknowingly had access to confidential information, such as financial models, strategic documents, internal communications, the kinds of things you absolutely do not want broadly exposed. As a result, employees, thousands of them, could query it and pull information out of it that others were not meant to see. And the exposure, well, it wasn't caused by a hacker. It was a simple misconfiguration. And who set it up? The security team, the very group responsible for protecting the organization. And now, for our second story. A company began piloting an AI-powered enterprise search platform to eliminate data silos. Now, the goal was to provide a unified view across the organization of all customer interactions. That sounds pretty good, actually. Now, during the POV, the company tried to jailbreak the technology and was successful. The result, the AI started to hallucinate and speculate where the CISO was spending his time. It actually theorized that he was working on a secret acquisition and plotting against others in the company. What started as a contained experiment threatened to become a reputational crisis. And now, our third story. A sales rep at a vendor software company used an authorized AI agent to analyze conversations with prospects for use in follow-up calls. One of the major outcomes of the agent was to identify all key stakeholders at the prospect and to provide the vendor with personalized insights on each. Now, the good news is the report created by the agent assigned a very high probability of close for the deal. The bad news is the report contained inflammatory language and heavily criticized certain individuals at the prospect company. Now, to make matters worse, the report was mistakenly emailed to the executive sponsor at the prospect by the sales rep. And needless to say, they lost the deal. So, which one of these stories is true? If you guessed all of them, which many of you did, you're right. Tenable has observed these incidents directly. Embarrassing and problematic, yes, but not catastrophic, except for maybe that rep who emailed the report. So, should you be worried about AI? Again, I'll get back to you on that. But here's what's really concerning. As hospitals begin deploying AI in the operating room for enhanced surgical precision, reports arise of bot surgeries, misidentified body parts, strokes, and other severe outcomes. AI-enabled weapon systems already exist today. The UN has warned that autonomous systems may struggle to uphold humanitarian law. They may even escalate conflicts faster than humans can respond. And sadly, very sadly, in British Columbia, the family of a 12-year-old mass shooting victim has filed lawsuit against OpenAI, alleging the company failed to alert authorities that GPT prompts by the shooter signaled impending violence. Now, these aren't hypothetical use cases. They're real-world examples of AI's use today, and they're becoming more perilous and more pervasive. If left unchecked, AI could create a medical crisis, could destabilize military operations, and even threaten public safety. So now should you be worried about AI? Maybe. But surely someone is accountable and owns AI risk, right? Is it the user who wanted the app? Is it the IT team who provisioned it? Is it the security team or the CISO who's supposed to vet it? Or even the CFO or CEO? At this point, patients, civilians, and investors, they're beginning to bear the risk and costs of AI downstream. Certainly, they shouldn't be responsible. Maybe everyone's responsible. So maybe you should be worried. Because if everyone's responsible, then no one's responsible. And this is the responsibility gap, and we must close it. One of the key challenges is that AI systems are meaningfully more complex to deploy than traditional SaaS apps. Not just technically, but also organizationally. You see, the data science team owns the models. The ML ops team owns the production pipeline. IT owns the deployment. Product team owns the integration of these capabilities into the offering. Legal owns the compliance. And what about the security team, by the way? Well, the security team is left at the end of the line trying to protect the system they didn't design and don't fully control. The responsibility gap exists in part because AI ownership is fractured, very fractured within the enterprise. And here's the reality. When something goes wrong, when data's leaked, when a model's poisoned, and when a brand is tarnished, and when there are significant cost and damages, it's the CEO and the board who are held liable. Now, for some, this may feel like a deja vu moment because we've seen this pattern before. Every decade or so, a major technology shift comes along that makes us reconsider everything we know about security and risk. Think about that. The PC era gave way to endpoint security and host-based firewalls. The internet necessitated network security and vulnerability management. And the shift to cloud gave us all kinds of crazy acronyms in security like CNAPP and CSPM and CWP and DSPM. And while AI is that next market-defining shift, its velocity, its ubiquity, and its autonomy is like anything we've seen before. Consider Google's Gemini. Google's Gemini has over 750 million monthly users. ChatGPT has over 800 million, and that number is expected to triple this year. You see, the latency between innovation and mass adoption has effectively vanished. There is a fundamental mismatch between the exponential speed of AI adoption and the linear speed of traditional corporate governance. And things will only move faster, and things will only become more complex. Roughly 90% of all organizations have adopted AI in some form. And yet half of those have already experienced some sort of cyber incident. That's a staggering number for a technology that's still in its infancy. Now, speed aside, because AI has become ubiquitous, it's quickly democratized application development. In a short span of time, an avalanche of no-code AI platforms have emerged that enable everyone and anyone to develop agents with little or no coding experience. These citizen developers are everywhere, vibe coding without regard for security. And that's when humans are involved at all. As we delegate more work to AI agents, we're also entering a crisis of autonomy. Today, AI agents have access to vast amounts of data, can write code, can trigger workflows without prior approval and without humans in the loop. And unlike humans, AI agents lack a moral compass and operate without regard for whether the actions they take are appropriate. And many of these agents go on to form multi-agent networks where they communicate directly with one another. As multi-agent networks proliferate and become more interconnected, the attack surface expands, and the chances of a self-induced crisis becomes more likely. So, given all of this, what do we do? Well, to close the responsibility gap, we have to get serious about how we manage this technology. And effective risk management and governance needs to happen in both the public sector and the private sector. Let's start with the public sector. Regulators play a massive role in setting the tone and tempo for safety, and their focus should be twofold. First, they should focus on AI outcomes, not the tech itself and how it's built, because specific technical architectures can quickly become obsolete in the AI era. Effective outcome-based approaches reduce the risk related to bias, such as training bias and algorithmic bias, reduce the risk related to misuse, and reduce the risk related to targeted attacks like prompt injection. These are unintended consequences of uncontrolled AI deployments. Now, last Friday, March 20th, the White House released a legislative framework to promote AI innovation and to create a single nationwide law that preempts state regulations. It prioritizes child safety, energy use, IP, and workforce development. We also need a framework for security, which brings me to my second area of focus for regulators. Now, I know the tech sector does not like to be regulated, but here's the good news. While the velocity, the ubiquity, and the autonomy, they're fundamentally different with AI, the security frameworks we use to regulate it don't have to be. The NIST cybersecurity framework, for example, in the US is a great place to start, and it's widely recognized as the standard for managing cyber risk. It's flexible enough to be adapted for AI-enabled threats via AI profiles without creating a compliance nightmare. And at the international level, because that's really important too, ISO cybersecurity standards, they're already in use by some countries, where appropriate modifications have been made to bridge the gap between general security and AI security. You see the mix of discovering assets and systems, identifying critical exposures, and monitoring for drift applies as naturally to an AI agent as a traditional server. Also, OWASP Gen AI Security Project provides the practical tools to secure agentic AI without slowing innovation, and that's important. So, regulators set the rules of the road, but the responsibility of governance ultimately resides with the private sector. And there, the responsibility is also twofold. First, we need to think about risk proactively. For over 30 years, our industry has been built on firefighting, detecting breaches, and responding at human speed. That made sense when attacks moved at human speed. It was the right way to operate. But it fails in the AI era, where everything moves at machine speed. And our spending reflects this outdated reality. Today, over 90% of all cybersecurity spend is in detection and response, while disproportionately a much smaller percentage is in prevention and proactive risk reduction. We're spending 90 cents of every dollar firefighting, waiting for plumes of smoke to appear, when instead, we should be fireproofing. This is where exposure management comes in, which is all about unified visibility, insight, and action, not only to understand risk, but to reduce it proactively and holistically. Because risk rarely appears in isolation. An overprivileged identity here, a misconfigured workload there, or a crucial vulnerability in a model somewhere else. Individually may look harmless, but chained together, they can create a lethal attack path. Exposure management also provides the necessary intelligence layer to orchestrate the right mix of humans and AI to get stuff done, because that's really important. This means providing context, providing direction, and providing the validation to actively reduce risk. Now, this matters because often AI makes probabilistic recommendations based on observed patterns, whereas security, true security, must operate on deterministic facts. It's the clarity that's key here, and when you have clarity about where your risk resides, you can act with confidence. And confidence is what ultimately drives accountability. Now, the second responsibility for the private sector is to ensure that risk management is embedded to every single layer in the organization. Because AI adoption is so widespread, risk assessment can't be done in silos. The developer, the data scientist, the business leader, all need to be evaluating risk through the same lens. That starts with identifying risk prior to deployment and understanding the blast radius if a model goes sideways. Also, an AI governance committee should be established consisting of cross-functional leadership to ensure risks are continuously monitored in accordance with the company's risk profile and regulatory framework. But while the responsibility is distributed, accountability is not. And ultimately, the company is responsible for the machine's actions. And there's even legal precedent to this effect. And if neither the private sector nor the AI model companies are able to effectively manage this profound risk, governments may conclude that AI should be treated like other critical technologies, such as aerospace and cryptography. This means we could see AI become nationalized, or at the very least, heavily regulated beyond anything we've ever seen before in the tech industry. Okay, so let's bring this back to you. Because closing the responsibility gap doesn't happen through technology alone. It happens through accountability. We're entering a world where the same people responsible for cloud risk, infra risk, identity risk, will also be responsible for deploying AI and having AI run inside their environments. And risk cannot live in a separate silo, which means the people in this room today have a new role to play. If you're a CISO or a security practitioner, you need to think about risk holistically, not just through the lens of your team, but across the organization, because that's how AI is deployed. And let's face it, AI does not care about your org charts. Risk isn't a spectator sport. You're the manifestation of governance. And if you're advising a board or sitting on one, AI risk must become a standing conversation. Boards will increasingly expect visibility to how AI is deployed, what risk it introduces, and how those risks are being managed. Because in the AI era, visibility is accountability. We must choose visibility over blindness. We must choose fireproofing over firefighting. Because without accountability, velocity becomes volatility. And that is the responsibility gap. But with accountability, AI becomes something very different. Not a source of chaos, but a capability we can trust. Not an accelerator of exposure, but an accelerator of resilience. The future of AI will be shaped by the choices we make today. And in a world where every company is an AI company, trust will be the only currency that survives. Thank you.